Okay. Peter, you ready? Very good. Well, thank you. This is a new area for us. We've done a lot of candidate forums, but this is the first time where we've actually had to do this virtually. And thanks to the City of Watertown and Peter Boyle over there that he's our systems administrator for the City of Watertown and does a great job. It's a great setup for us. The technology is already here. When I called the mayor and I called Peter, he said, "Yep, let's get her done." So thanks to those two. And the primary election will take place in Coddington County at the Coddington County Extension Building on June 2nd. The hours will be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And look for door number H or door letter H, and you'll get the entry. There will be signs, plenty of signs around the building as well. Absentee ballot or absentee voting is available right now. For all the information, you can find that out on coddington.org. Most of the, if not all, the registered voters should have received an application in the mail to fill it out for the ballot to be mailed to your house. But if you haven't got that and need more information, coddington.org. This is being streamed live on the GovTV, as well as the Watertown Area Facebook page, and as well as the City of Watertown also has a YouTube channel. You can see that there, but if you missed part of it or want to play it back for the exciting highlights that you may have missed when it was live, you can do that at your leisure. I'd like to introduce the former managing editor of the Watertown Public Opinion,
Roger Whittle?
Roger Whittle. Geez, look at that guy. I've known him all my life.
How soon they forget.
Yes, absolutely. And Roger will be tonight's moderator. We've done this a few times with Roger. He was available and willing to do this for us tonight. We are going to open up with a 2-minute opening remarks, closing remarks, and we're not going to play hardball, but if you see my little red flag, it means we're kind of ready to move on. So with no further ado, Roger.
Thanks. And just going over the ground rules, if you will, we will have a 2-minute opening statement, and then I will read a question that will be posed to all of our candidates. And then after everybody answers, every candidate will get a 1-minute rebuttal if they want one. But that's certainly, if you feel like you answered the question in total the first time, you can certainly waive that rebuttal. We're still missing one of our candidates, Jim Didier, who is challenging Charlie Waterman for the District 2 Commission seat, has not arrived yet.
Right?
And Travis, right, sorry. But we will let him slide in if and when he gets here. But our candidates for the Coddington County Commission tonight are District 2 incumbent Charlie Waterman. And then we have a challenger in District 2, Travis Paulson. And in District 4, we have the challenger Toby Wishart, our former Coddington County Sheriff. And the incumbent District 4 County Commissioner is Troy Van Dusen. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. We're properly social distance here, so please don't write in and complain that nobody's wearing masks. We're more than 6 feet apart here, and we assume we'll all be safe tonight.
And Roger, if I could, I want to let the people online know that if you have questions right now and want to submit those, the best way is to email them to me at tim@watertownsd.com. Don't use our Facebook page because I'm not monitoring that, but I am monitoring my email. So if you have a question for either the council or the commissioners or the representatives, email me. It's just tim@watertownsd.com. Thanks.
All right, we'll start with your 2-minute opening statement. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running, and we'll just go down the line, starting with Charlie.
Good evening. It's certainly different times than up at Lake area. My name is Charlie Waterman. I reside in Fuller County for the last 20 years. I am a business owner in Watertown. I own 2 businesses. My past life, I farmed, ranched, and come from Mobridge. And my wife is from McIntosh. So about 20 years ago, we moved out here, and we're lucky enough to find a place in Fuller Township. I have 2 children, both grown. One of them is in town here. My son is in Mitchell. I have a daughter that lives in town here.
Charlie, can you get closer to the microphone? Rest of the people online have a hard time hearing you.
Okay. Where should I start from?
Just pick it up where you left off.
Okay. I'm basically conservative, not only in my thoughts, but also in my financial affairs. I got started in politics. I owe something back to the area. It's been good to me in Watertown. I've no complaints. The former farming and ranching was a wonderful way to bring up my children but when it come time to college, it was time to move, and the price of ground, we couldn't buy any more ground, and wound up here.
All right, Travis Paulson.
Well, good evening. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Watertown Area Chamber of Commerce and Tim Sheehan for hosting the candidate forum. Also, thanks, Roger, for moderating the event tonight. Also like to thank the folks that are tuning in and watch tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to get to know your candidates. Lastly, I'd like to thank the other candidates for joining me here tonight and participating. For those of you who don't know me, I'd just like to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Travis Paulson. I was born and raised in Cottington County. I grew up on a family farm in the Wallace area. My family began farming in Cottington County in 1908 when my great-grandfather came here from Norway. I continue to operate the farm today. Upon graduating from Florence High School, I pursued my degree, my college degree at Mankato State University. I received a degree in construction management in 1997. I then worked as a project superintendent for a national home builder in the Twin Cities. In March of 2000, my father lost his battle to cancer, and after a great deal of thought and prayer, my wife and I decided to move back to South Dakota. I took over the family farm as well as started Quality First Homes. I designed and built custom homes and acted as a general contractor. After several years of operating the farm and Quality First Homes, I had the opportunity to expand my farming operation, and then I solely concentrated on being an egg producer in Cottington County. I continue to operate the farm with my wife, Joanne. We have 3 sons who we've been happy to raise in rural Cottington County. Alec is 21, Ethan is 16, and Noah is 14. I've served on my local township board for over 10 years. I also serve on the South Dakota Association of Towns and Townships board as your local representative at the state level. I currently serve as president of the Telemark and Cemetery Board. In the past, I've served on the Florence School Board as well as the trustees board at Cornerstone Church. In the coming months, I very much look forward to meeting many residents in Cottington County that I have not had the opportunity to meet yet. So once again, thank you to the Area Chamber of Commerce for hosting the forum tonight.
All right, and now we're going to come back. Jim Didier has arrived. Welcome to the forum. You missed the ground rules. I'll go over them very briefly. You'll get a 2-minute introductory statement to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll follow with questions. 2 minutes to answer a question that we pose to everybody. And if you would like a 1-minute rebuttal after everybody is finished, you can certainly take that, but not mandatory. So Jim, introduce yourself and tell our viewers a little about yourself.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me here. Yeah, it just went green.
There you go.
Thank you for having me here. I'm Jim Didier, not originally from Cottington County. Me and my wife moved here in 2016 after I retired from 40 years with Air Force Fire Protection. I was raised in Colorado. How did I end up here? This is my wife's home. She was raised in Summit. Her entire family still lives in the area between Summit and down here. As I said, I spent 40 years Air Force Fire Protection, 9 years active duty, and 32 years civil service. I retired as a fire chief at Eielson Air Force Base. So where I didn't work within the county government, I worked very closely with them through mutual aid agreements, and I was always on the local LEPC at each one of the bases where I was fortunate enough to be fire chief at. Like I said, we retired here, moved to be around her family, have very much enjoyed the Watertown area, Cottington County, and thought this is a way for me to give back. Like I said, I'm retired. I don't have a 9 to 5 that's going to take me away, and I've got the time to commit to it. My experience as a fire chief, I worked lots of contracts, lots of budget, man issues, and I guess that's about all I got.
All right, well, thank you and welcome. Toby Wishard.
Hello, Toby Wishard. I, of course, would not be here without my wife of 22 years, Janelle, my 3 children, and my extended family on both sides who all go down this political road with you when you take this on. My first 6 years of life were spent on the family farm south of Florence, and with the remainder of my growing up done in Florence. Graduated from high school there. So my rural Cottington roots run deep. After earning my degree in criminal justice, I was fortunate enough to spend the next 21 years working for the Cottington County Sheriff's Office. Working my way through the ranks, spending the last 9 years as your elected sheriff, building, coaching, training, and leading a team that has made the Sheriff's Office what it is today. As a 3.5-year small business owner of a 25-year family business, I worked hard to triple that business in that time, paying it off in the first year, all while making payroll and paying business taxes. I'm proud of my county service, but I'm even more proud to own a local business that I can hand down to my children. I'm eager to use my newfound business experience along with my county government experience to serve the citizens of Cottington County again.
And Troy Van Dusen.
Good evening. I am Troy Van Dusen, your current District 4 Cottington County Commissioner seeking re-election to the Cottington County Commission. I would like to thank the Chamber, Tim, for sponsoring this event, and also the City of Watertown for allowing us to use these facilities tonight. I have been your County Commissioner since 2017. I'm married to Carol and have 2 daughters, Megan, 20, and Lauren, who is 15. I have dedicated my life to public service, almost 24 years of service to the Watertown Police Department, before deciding to retire in September of last year, allowing me more time to focus on my responsibilities as your current County Commissioner and also as the News Director at KXLG. I have created and ran 2 successful entertainment businesses, which I ran for several years before ultimately selling both to focus on advancement in my career in law enforcement. My parents were small business owners, so I understand the commitment that it takes to succeed during difficult times, and this time is no doubt one of them. My parents and her parents raised, my wife, and her parents raised cattle and farmed west of Hoven their entire lives. We both understand the importance the producer plays in our economy. In my 3.5 years on the County Commission, we have accomplished a great deal. We have improved our courthouse security. We've established programs such as 24/7, Drug Court, Vets Court, and the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, which is helping to rehabilitate, not incarcerate. We've also rewritten our zoning ordinance, allowing for the development of wind energy in our county, a resource that will ultimately provide an estimated $39 million in county tax revenue generated over the next 25 years for Cottington, Grant, and Dual counties. Now that is development. Many of those dollars will come right back to us here in Cottington County, helping to stimulate our economy. 3.5 years ago, I told you that I would work hard to spur economic development in our county, and that's exactly what I've done. I have authored a county resolution which provides for a 100% tax break for businesses looking to establish themselves in our city and county. That also includes agriculture development, fourplex properties, and any businesses adding a physical addition to their structure, $30,000 or more. I did this because I know how important growth and development is to our county and our city. I sit on the Watertown Development Board of Directors and serve as Coddington County's voice on that board. I have said all along that I will never leave you before the end of my term. The ability to build a strong relationship between city and county is more critical now than ever. I've been employed by both the city and county, and I have a great deal of respect for all of our employees. I have worked hard to build that bond and support both while being transparent every step of the way. I am dedicated, conservative, and honest. That's what you get with me, and I look forward to continue working for you for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. I think for our first question, we're going to start off with something general, and we will probably not need a rebuttal here, but I'd like each of you to explain to our viewers what you feel is the biggest issues facing Coddington County and how you would go about tackling those issues. And let's do it reverse and start with Troy this time.
Well, thank you, Roger. I think one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now is the situation, the economic situation facing our county and our city both. These are unprecedented times. We're going to have to make some hard decisions in Coddington County related to our county budget. Some of our bigger projects, our department heads are being asked to cut back on those for the next year or two. So I think that our spending is going to be a big issue. Our county budget currently is $17.2 million, and we're going to have to look at sizing that back. That's the biggest issue I think is going to be facing Coddington County in the next year. We have people that were laid off in town. We have people right now currently that don't know if they're going to have jobs. That's a big issue facing us. And as an elected official, that's on my radar, and I understand that we're going to have to address that. We're going to have to provide these people some hope and some relief.
Toby.
Obviously, we're seeing unprecedented times right now. The ag economy 5 years ago was not, we were seeing a downturn at that time. And if you would have told me that it was going to be this bad, or told an ag producer that it was going to be this bad today, I don't think they would have even agreed with you. And we need to, as a county, we need to better prepare ourselves for times like this. What we need to do is we need to concentrate fully on economic growth. If we have more business, more income of business and tax dollars coming into Coddington County from spurred business and growth, it would better prepare the county for times like we're going to be facing, because the county is still going to have expenditures that they are obligated by state statute to provide. And it makes it that much more tough when, as Commissioner Van Dusen put it, we're going to have to make cuts. And that is serious. And it is going to have to be looked at moving forward, because obviously we are seeing times where people have lost their jobs and they've been told to go straight to the unemployment line, and it isn't good. So we need to look at the big picture here. We need to spur our growth in any way, shape, or form that we can to better prepare ourselves and better position Coddington County in the future so that we can take these kinds of economic downturns, yet still provide the much needed resources that the county is obligated to provide for them.
Travis.
Thank you. Got me on here? There we go. Now we're on. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's these times are very challenging, something that none of us have ever lived through before, and obviously the COVID-19 thing here is the biggest challenge at this time in the county, and there's a lot that goes with that. it leads, obviously, as the previous two had said, to seriously considering budget and where these dollars need to go and where we want them to go. And those are two different things that we need to figure out, first of all, where they need to go. Toby also mentioned the ag economy, and that's one of my main points here that I wanted to make as far as the challenge facing the county, and not just the ag economy, the whole economy, and that's everywhere. But the struggling ag economy is a big deal in Cottington County, and it started several years ago. And when the ag economy struggles, the whole economy struggles, and I think everybody needs to realize that our county needs to be there for our ag producers, and they need to. There needs to be things done that can prop them up and to help them so that they can help the rest of the community. A couple other issues beyond those. Affordable housing is an issue in Cottington County that I think needs to be looked at, and possibly some new ways to provide some affordable housing. Flooding has always been an issue in Watertown, and I think that's a combination of the city and the county that need to work together, and there's that is happening right now. They're beginning again to talk about that, and I think the city and the county need to work together to talk about that. So those would be some of the main issues facing the county right now, I feel.
Jim.
Well, as each of them have said, during this COVID-19, the big thing is the economy and getting us back up, and that's going to be long term. But along with that is the infrastructure. We've got to work on our infrastructure. There's road systems out there that need help. There's township roads that need help. That aids in the agricultural. That aids in the ability for the farmer to get his crop to the elevators and get them in out of the fields. And we've got to put more into the infrastructure out there, as well as the flooding. We've got to look at projects that can help there.
And Charlie.
Well, of course, there's the virus. That's everything you hear 24 hours a day. We've had layoffs. We got 3 major industries in town here. One of them just had a major layoff. The other one laid off some. The third one laid it off. The third one also has asked their employees to take a 10% pay cut. This is not locally related. This goes down to the whole country, because you can't get stuff to build stuff because everybody's back to the virus. The price of corn, $2.63. We've got farmers that are not getting their financing, and next year, after talking to a bank of ag lender, he says, I don't know, it's going to be a tough year, and there's a lot of them we're not going to refinance. So where they're going to find the money from is another problem. Watertown relies on agriculture. Without agriculture, we die. We need to get, for development, I'd like to see more small town development. I'd like to see some stuff put in Florence, Wallace, Henry, Waverly, with some development that would be put out there. It would keep the people, it would keep the kids in the school. It would help to keep their school alive. Maybe not a Terex, but if it's a 20 jobs, it's 20 jobs. Our budget next year, we're already looking at holding the line on spending. We're looking right now where we could possibly not spend money, anticipating hard times to come.
Thank you. Everybody seemed to mention the problems with the budget we're going to have. This question, I would like to know specifically, first of all, we always brag, if you will, about how our government entities in South Dakota are fiscally conservative, and they don't spend money unnecessarily. Now that we're at a point where we're going to have to probably look to rein in some of our spending, where specifically within the county budget can we find dollars that we don't have to spend? And I'm going to keep the two districts grouped. So we're going to start with these two, and then we'll go there. Why don't you start, Toby?
Excuse me, am I on? There we go. This gets to be a very tough question, and this isn't going to be an easy answer, no matter how you cut the pie. 80% to 85% of any of your budget, when you're working in government work, as I managed two of the largest budgets in the county for almost 10 years, 85% of that is your personnel. So what I would say, as I put on my former sheriff hat, is number one thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make sure that we conserve overtime to the utmost. We're going to need to make sure that we schedule shifting so that we reduce any and all overtime costs that we can throughout the county. So personally, that's what I would do with the two budgets that I used to manage. And so that'd be the message that I'd be handing down. Now, of course, I understand that the sheriff is an elected official, elected by the entire county. That person has to, that position, you do what you've got to do with what you have. But that's my answer there. Number one would be overtime and watching personnel. If there's any way that we can, we absolutely have to put a moratorium on adding any FTEs in the county. And if, you know, I hate to even say it, because in government work, you've usually got one of the more secure jobs in the area. But I'm here to tell you, when you're hearing about manufacturing plants that are not just laying off, but actually cutting staff as fast as we see it, if worse comes to worse, you might have to look at some non-essential personnel and see if any cuts need to be made. And I hate to even have to say that, but as a former elected official, when the rubber meets the road and you have to make a tough decision, tough decisions have to be made. They may not be popular, but as a former leader, you just make them, and you have to move on.
Thank you. And Troy?
Well, that's one thing that Toby and I do agree on, and that is 85% of your overall budget, your highest dollar that you're going to spend in any budget is going to be related to personnel, health insurance, salary increases, that sort of thing. We're going to take care of our county employees as best as we can. The sheriff's office came through with a grant request here for 2 full-time employees. It would have been a grant for 3 years. And I voted against that. I just, until we can do more with less, I have a problem adding additional personnel, and that was a request that came through a month or so ago. Not that, another area that I think we can look at maybe reducing our cost in is supplementing or providing dollars to programs that we have. Unfortunately, we're going to have to make some tough decisions. It seems like I'm talking in circles right now, but to the Boys and Girls Club and to some of those organizations that we have contributed to, those are some things that we're really going to have to look at. I think all county personnel is essential. Otherwise, they shouldn't be there. But if the rubber meets the road and we do have to go down that road, then that's a decision that we're going to have to make, and it's not an easy one, like Toby just said. But I think we're going to do everything we can before it gets to that position. I think we're going to have to do what we can with what we have, and like I said before, department heads and their projects have been asked to cut back. We don't know where we're at right now, and we're not going to know where we're at right now until we get down the road. So, I think it's premature to say that we're going to cut this or we're going to cut that. If we have to, it's going to be a tough decision, but we're going to have to do it. So.
And we'll go back to District 2 and start with Travis.
Turn me on. There we go. So I'm going to answer this a little different, and it's not in an attempt to skirt the question by any means, but so I'm not going to pretend to know at this time all of the challenges that the county faces or the potential budget cuts that may need to be made. I'll better be equipped to answer that as I spend the next several months visiting, with county heads, county officials, and residents. I can tell you I've attended nearly all of the commission meetings since the first of the year, several of the last ones here virtually, and I'm making an attempt to inform myself of everything that's going on in this year, using the year to do this, and stay informed of all the county operations. I feel that's the best way to keep up to speed and to get up to speed and find out what's going on in the county and get a handle on those issues. I look forward to learning a great deal in the coming months here and being able to put forth some usable suggestions that I'll be able to make in order to make our county better. And I will just add that I'm not campaigning for this commission seat with any agendas, if you will. I don't have, it's not a specific topic or an issue that has me interested in the job. My goal is to participate in finding solutions that work for the residents of Cottington County and to serve the constituents best I can. So, I think in the coming months, as I'm able to pick through this budget and like I say, talk with department heads and the folks that run the county, I'll have a better feel for that and be able to better answer that.
All right, thank you. Jim?
Well, I'm kind of following Travis. I have been watching the budget. I have been participating in the meetings. I hear a lot of the, I understand that 85% is personnel, but it's like any other thing. You need to look at what's going out there to mitigate the risk or take care of the issue that money is going to. And we have to evaluate what we can handle and what we can't handle. We have to look at if we can lay back, if there's a contract out there that we can postpone, if there's other ways to save money. I don't know until I really look at it and see what we can and can't do. That's a real hard one for me to put an answer on right now.
And Charlie?
Well, at the present time, we're starting to work on next year's budget, and it's kind of like looking into a fog because you don't know what's going to happen. It's extremely difficult. I'm on the highway department. We've talked about what we're not going to do next year. It pretty well looks right now like it's going to be a flat line thing. There will be no personnel increases. We're going to have to live with what we've got, which is a wonderful group of guys. They all seem to work together. We were discussing the extension office this afternoon down at the extension complex. We've got some projects that were scheduled for this year. We're talking about letting them off maybe in 2 years, right along with Memorial Park. In our sheriff's department, and Troy alluded to this, we just had a request to put in for another full-time deputy. Yes, the federal government would pay for that for 3 years, but we have to outfit that. And we have to buy the uniforms, we have to pay for the vehicle that they drive around, the gas, etc. And that gets to be about $80,000, and that's not something that we want to look at this time.
Thank you. Okay, I have a submitted question here, and forgive me, whoever submitted it really likes to write. So I will read you this question. It's clear over the years, especially of late, the state is not interested in assisting county officials in their efforts to find new revenue sources, meaning taxes, to help counties run their business. The best example locally is no state money to build a new jail, a jail that continues to get more and more inmates because of changes of South Dakota law, which forces prisoners back to the county instead of state facilities, because the legislatures don't want to pay for more prisons in South Dakota. I'm sure Hugh heard that. If allowed under state law, under what conditions would you vote for consolidating the county with the city of Watertown to get access to the growing sales tax revenue the city is allowed to collect, to fund the needs of the county, and to help streamline, meaning lower, administrative costs for both governments to the taxpayers of Watertown and Cottington County? And we'll start over here with Charlie.
Well, right now, as you heard Mayor Karen say, they've had to do away with several projects because of the lower sales tax. I'm coming to mind with the ice arena. It's something that would be a nice amenity for Watertown, but at the present time and the foreseeable future, it doesn't look like it's going to be. The city has its own problems, the county has its own problems. The two, we have a lot of rural. I would be more comfortable with keeping them separated at this time.
Okay, Jim?
I think it sounds good to merge and cut costs, but it's not practical in most aspects. The city has certain things they have to do, the county has theirs. There's statutes that divide them. The city and the county do work very closely on certain items, and I have no doubt that they have looked at this regularly to see what they can jointly do. I appreciate the individual's question, but I don't see that there's a lot of things that the county and the city could merge together and do it out of one.
Okay, Travis?
Yeah, that is an interesting concept, and I have to, I guess, agree with the previous two that it's, you know, the structure of the city and the county are two very different things. Obviously, they both operate under the same South Dakota codified laws, but they each have their own ordinances to deal with as well. So I guess, you know, as far as under what conditions would the county and city consolidate, I guess at this time I can't, I guess, think of any conditions that would accommodate that. So I guess that's
Okay. Toby?
Well, of course, I was in office in neck deep. Senate Bill 70 comes down. Says that we're going to start diverting prisoners from our state penitentiary system. Good luck, county jails, was basically what the state said to us at that time. They put it a little bit more nice than that. They said, well, we'll reimburse you after they thought about it. We'll reimburse you so many per head per month that you go over, things like that. So there was some supplemental from the state. But largely the measure of that whole Senate Bill 70 fell on the county's shoulders. And that's right at a time when we're looking at our jail facility that was originally built for 35 inmates, and we have an average daily population over 60. Now, in most recent times, that jail population has gone down. And I'm here to tell you, sitting here with the courts being shut down as we speak right now, those numbers are likely going to continue to drop. And then what we're going to see is once the courts ramp back up again, no matter, you know, depending on how long that takes, when the courts decide it's safe enough from the COVID to be able to open up, now we're going to start to see an influx again. So we see this pendulum swing and the population of the jail go up and down. Now, in answering your question, city and county, as far as being able to go together on a jail, I can tell you, been down that road, experienced that, been there, done it. There's statutes in place that right now that currently lay this responsibility on the county. And if I was the city, why would I want to take it on? So you have that hurdle right there to begin with. To get towards the funding issue, and what you're talking about with the funding, that's one of the main reasons why I'm sitting here and running for county commissioner. When I was still sheriff in office, Commissioner Lee Gable went to work. He's a commissioner, I'll give it to him. He thinks outside of the box. He went to work on a half-penny sales tax to be able to provide funding for counties specifically for an issue like a jail where you're constitutionally obligated to provide the services for. I went to Pierre and helped Commissioner Gable testify in front of appropriations that first year that we presented this, that he presented that half-penny sales tax. And since I've been out of office, Commissioner Gable's continued to work on that. He's been very persistent with it. And this last go-around, he got, I believe it was a little over 50%, but he needed 2/3 of the vote. Gaining traction. I have already committed to Commissioner Gable my support of that half-penny sales tax measure ongoing, because when we worked through the first jail initiative, we found out just how few actual landowners we have in Cottington County. Now, when I say that, what I mean is we are trying to fund things in the county on property tax initiative when there are actually not as many landowners as there are per capita per the population. So we're trying to put more of a tax burden on a smaller population of the county. That's where a sales tax initiative to me makes a lot more sense. It's a lot more fair. Everybody's paying for it, even those members of our fellow states and counties that come in influx into Watertown to spend their tax dollars. They spend them here. That half-penny sales tax also then goes to that project. I also support this to the nth degree because it has a sunset measure in it. You pay for that particular project and it's done. It's not a tax that is ongoing and stays forever.
And Troy, and I will mention here, I just got a text from somebody saying that Troy and Charlie they're having a little trouble hearing you. So if you just
Okay.
move your microphone a little closer to you and
I'll speak up.
speak
How's
up,
that?
yes.
All right. You're talking about a city-county partnership, and I too don't know that that is the best option. Having worked for the city, I understand city government. I also understand county government, now working for the county for 3.5 years. I agree with everybody else up here that that's probably not an easy thing to do, although there are counties and cities in South Dakota that have a great working relationship and a great partnership. And economically, that makes a lot of sense to a lot of people, and it makes sense to me. I think that that's important to do that. With that being said, they still have their separate expenses. They still have their separate cost. House Bill 1099 was a bill that was authored by Commissioner Gable. He did a great job, supported and taken through the legislature by Representative York, who's with us here tonight. Nancy, thank you for that. That would have provided a funding mechanism for county infrastructure, not just a jail, but county infrastructure. And the way that law was written was it actually would allow the county to go and ask the public to put the issue on the ballot, okay? And it failed in the legislature, but we're getting closer. With that being said, I don't support a jail at this time. My opponent, Mr. Wishart here, has said that as well. But back in 2013, he said that the current facility will not function in 10 years, and that would put us at 2023. So my question is if it's not going to function here in 2.5 years, what are we going to do? He said that he supports that. I support that too, but that's 2.5 years away that we have to fund this jail. If we're not going to be able to house our inmates, if it's just not going to function, what are we going to do? That's my question. To answer your question about city and county working together, I ran on the platform when I first ran for county commissioner that there was a lack of city-county cooperation. That was always an issue. That got in the way the previous time when we were looking at building a justice facility for both the sheriff's office, the police department. It got in the way, and it doesn't need to be that way. That was my platform back then, and I am all about partnerships between the city and county. That's important. Now, can we function as one unit? That's to be determined. I don't know if we could do that or not, and I don't know what would trigger that. But at this time, I think that's important that we continue to look at that, especially going forth.
So it'd be a good chance. Does anybody have a rebuttal to anything they heard? All right. We've got time for a couple more questions here. This is another emailed question. The county commission in the past has been very supportive of public transportation in Condon County. What is your position on public transportation moving forward? And we'll start with Troy.
Public transportation, the county commission does support Watertown Transit. We have for several years. We've given money to Watertown Transit. That's very important. I think that we have to continue to do as much of that as we can. Watertown Transit, it's actually transit for all of northeastern South Dakota now. They've branched out to different counties. They're providing services for individuals that don't have other means of transportation. They also provide a much needed service, taking individuals to medical appointments free of charge. Prairie Lakes actually picks up that tab for a lot of those folks. So public transit, I think, is key to being able to have a mobile community, to get them where they're going. We will continue, as long as I'm on the commission, to support that.
Toby.
Public transportation is key, especially in a rural, any place rural is key. Dependable transportation is optimal to success or failure. So obviously the Watertown Transit needs to be supported ongoing. Any of its endeavors that it branches out to. I worked with former manager of that, Pam Kwasniewski, to get services pushed out to the Florence area, for instance, when I was still in county sheriff. Understanding that is vital, especially with the weather patterns that we have. Dependable transportation is just key, and it's got to be done, and it's got to be kept affordable. I have heard in the past, I have heard from some residents that the price keeps creeping up a little bit. So that is one initiative that I would not mind lending my fleet expertise. Because I managed a fleet for the sheriff's office for over 10 years. I would not mind utilizing some of my newfound business sense, but as well as my fleet experience, to try and help and see if we can't stretch some more dollars out of that system to try and keep ticket costs per ride costs as low as possible to help our folks that lean on that system. And kudos to that system. It's been great. We even used it for transportation for our children from school. What a lifesaver when you're a dual working household. And my kids still remember their drivers and their names. So it's a great system, and we need to support it ongoing.
Travis.
Well, thank you. I too think that the public transportation system in Watertown, the Watertown Transit, serves a wonderful purpose for those who utilize it. And I appreciate the county's contribution to that program. And I absolutely, as a commissioner, would support ongoing, continuing support of that program. I think as we live through, all of us live through this, this pandemic, that we get a sense of what it's like not to be able to go out. And I think it maybe forces us to maybe think about that there are folks that can't get out. They don't have a way to get out and get to the store when they want to get to the store and make it to medical appointments. And so I think it serves a wonderful purpose in our community, and I certainly support the ongoing support by the county of that.
Jim.
Well, I'll keep mine a lot shorter. I agree with them all. I mean, we need to continue to support it. It is needed out there. Too many people rely on it, and yeah, I think we should continue to support it.
Thanks. And Charlie.
Well, it is a wonderful thing. It is county taxes. There's supported by county taxes. I think last year we increased their budget. I don't remember how much. I mean, they reach out to the small towns. They've consolidated. They've been trying to take care of their funding better. I personally support the funding. I personally hand out ride tokens for free to help people with getting around town. So it's a wonderful thing.
All right. And we just got an emailed question. Somebody wants to know about a wage study that the county was considering or may have done. Why are we doing it? Should we do it? And what will we do with the results of it? And let's start over here with Charlie.
Well, the wage study was last done 25 years ago in the county. It came up again, and partly with the city. The city just did a wage study, and it's for equitable fairness in job descriptions. Job descriptions change over the course of time. Some people with a wage study, there is downsides. Some people do get less of an increase or might have to take a decrease. Some of them will get a substantial increase. Have we initiated anything yet? No. Is it something we're looking at? Yes, for in the future.
Right, and I know that the challenges aren't involved in this, but what's your general feeling on these wage studies, and how closely should we follow the results in our dealings?
I think they should be looked at. You can't just sit there and while everybody else's wages are changes, whether they're going up or whether they're going down, depending on the economic times. And if you don't keep yours in adjustments with everybody else, you're either going to be giving money away or you're going to be losing qualified people. You need to do them. I'm surprised that there isn't a statute that says it needs to be done every 10 years, every 5 years, or something like that. Yeah, I'd support it.
Right. Travis.
Yes, I too think that wage studies serve a positive purpose in all forms of government or business. I think it's a fair way to find out if you're paying your employees properly, and make sure that you're treating them properly. Now, I'm not familiar with, I was at the county commission meeting here a couple months ago when they discussed it. Now, I don't remember if they discussed costs associated with that, or what the costs were. I know they kind of discussed the costs, but that would be one thing that I would look at is to weigh the costs and to make sure that the study that we're getting, the company that we hired to do the study gives us some real meat, if you will, back in a report that what they're giving us is a good value to the county.
Troy.
The wage study was brought up during a county commission meeting, and we did discuss that. We did not take any action to go forth with that at this time. And then COVID hit. And so that, that changes our situation a little bit. I, like the others up here, agree that it should be done. It keeps things equitable and on an even keel with other agencies, locally and regionally. But I think that for right now, that's going to be a hard sell to implement anything from a wage study, and until we find out what direction we're going and where we're going to have to cut back. So, does that answer your question?
If you're happy, I'm happy.
Okay.
And Toby.
Well, just in contrast to what Commissioner Waterman said, the county, I don't believe, has paid for a wage study in the last 25 years. But I was sheriff in office. I want to say it may have been approximately maybe 10 years ago when the actual employees themselves, through multiple departments, got together and basically did their own. They did the work. They called around to other comparable counties in size of population and and ancillary towns as well, and put together their own study. And they were successful at that time. Of course, we're talking about different times, and some pay increases were done. Of course, they always want to compare themselves to a city government, which there just isn't. The revenue streams aren't the same. So, it's almost always as your hierarchy is state, city, county, and as wages go, always feel like we're trailing the cities behind. But one thing that I concentrated on, so wage studies are good. So let's put it that way. Wage studies are good. It's good to know where you're at. Whether or not you can make that commitment and make pay raises is another issue, which we're going to see. But one thing that I did as I was sheriff is I also understood that we're going to have growing concerns with our jail and the jail issue. And I concentrated efforts on areas where I knew we were going to have a problem with personnel issues if we didn't. And I made sure that those folks that were working hard in the jail to keep us all safe every day were paid well. And I still believe that they are because of the initiatives that I took. And again, that keeps us all safe. It keeps very good personnel in those positions, which helps out everybody a great deal. Wage study's good. Well, we're going to have to be very careful moving forward as far as what we do as far as budgeting.
All right, we have a rebuttal.
Yeah, I took those figures based on what the city had paid for their wage study, and that was approximately between $30,000 and $35,000 to do a wage study, if I remember correctly. The information of how long it had been since we'd done a wage study, I got from our county auditor.
Okay, anybody else? All right, well, that's it for questions. We'll give everybody a 2-minute closing statement, and we'll do the reverse order that we did with the opening statement. So we'll start with Troy.
Oh, there we go. Well, now you've heard the differences between my opponent and I. In closing, I would like to say that over the last 3.5 years, I've enjoyed representing the residents of District 4. And if you choose to reelect me in this position, I will continue to work hard to make sure that your voice is heard in county government. It's not about who has the most signs around town or where they're located or how big they are. Ultimately, it's about putting the person in office that you feel will represent you best. It is important that you get out and vote, either absentee or in person, on June 2nd at the polls. Exercise your rights as a citizen in this county and do just that. Your voice will be heard just like it has been for the last 3.5 years. I'm always available, always. My wife, kids, and I, we live here. We attend Holy Name of Jesus Church. We give back to the Watertown community every chance we have, just like you do. I will continue to be responsible and conservative with your tax dollars. We will continue to move our county forward. It's certainly a lot easier when partnerships are built and maintained on respect, integrity, and trust. I will never leave you before the end of my term. If you elect me, I will finish my term. I will always support the residents of District 4 and all of the employees of both Coddington County and the City of Watertown. You have my word on that. Thank you. Vote Van Dusen and re-elect me as your Coddington County Commissioner, District 4. I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Toby.
Well, thank you, Chamber, Tim, and your team, and Roger for taking your time to moderate this. It's much appreciated. There's a stark contrast of experience between my opponent and me. I spent 21 years in county government. I managed 2 of the largest county budgets. I led 40 employees for 9 years. I was elected twice as your sheriff and built a team while bringing the sheriff's office into the 21st century. Being elected by the entire county, the buck stopped with me. I made the tough decisions and successfully led the team that I built. That's proven leadership. Now, as a small business owner, I see the whole picture and I understand the importance of a strong local economy. I wish to use my business experience to make Coddington County a place where our young people want to stay, work, and raise a family. I am your candidate for growth and business in Cottington County. Thank you.
Travis.
Well, once again, I'd like to thank the Chamber for this opportunity, and to Tim and to Roger for moderating. Appreciate that. You know, when I decided to run for this seat on the Cottington County Commission, a question was raised by an individual. And that question was, so you want to be a politician? And my response, without hesitation, is no, I don't want to be a politician. I feel there's a vast difference between being a politician and working for the people in local government. As your commissioner in District 2, I will vow to work for the people of the county and make decisions in the best interest of the county. I understand that the responsibility that I'm asking you to give me is a big one, and I don't take it lightly. I'm not going to claim to have all the answers. I'm not going to tell you what I think you want to hear, but I will commit to you, the people of Cottington County, that I will give you the truth, and I'll always strive to represent you in a professional and honest manner. As an ag producer, along with my education and business experience, I have a lot to offer the residents of Cottington County. Additionally, my current and past participation in local government and on other boards has prepared me well to serve you, the people of Cottington County. I was born and raised here. I have lived and worked here most of my life. My wife and I are raising our kids here. My faith is very important to me, and I try to apply it to all that I do. I was raised in a Christian family and am proud of the values that I try to live by. I feel that we should serve and use the gifts that we have been given as we are able. Last but not least, I regard honesty and integrity as among the most important characteristics that a person can possess. I am well prepared to take on the responsibilities of County Commissioner. I look forward to visiting with the residents in Cottington County in the coming months, and I ask for your support. I'm a firm believer that votes, like many other things, need to be earned, and I would like the opportunity to earn your vote. If you have any questions for me, I encourage you to contact me. I'd be happy to visit with you and attempt to earn your vote. Thank you.
Jim.
To start off with, I'd like to thank Tim and the Chamber for having this. As you can tell, I am not a politician. I've never campaigned before. This is my first campaign. This is my first campaign get-together where I've sat and answered questions before, and I thank you for the opportunity to do that. I hope I've learned a lot. I can't promise that I'm going to go in, if elected, I'm going to go in and change anything. That's not what I'm running for. I'm running because I feel I've got good common sense, good leadership skills, proven ability to work with different agencies, and it's a way for me to give back. I look forward to this campaign and hope that I win, and hope for your vote. Thank you.
Thanks. And finally, Charlie.
Well, we come to an end here, and yes, it goes dittos. Thank you for hosting this tonight, for all of you. I don't have any prepared notes to read from rote, so I will have to speak from the heart. I have enjoyed thoroughly my 3.5 years so far on the Cottington County Commission. I listen to other politicians say that you don't understand what it's like to give back and you appreciate it until you've served in office. It's something that truly is humbling. When I spend money, I act like I'm spending my own. People know that I'm tight, thrifty. That's my motto. That's the way I've always lived. That's the way my grandfather taught me. That's the way my mother taught me. My dad taught me. You put your house in order before you spend your money. We are definitely going to have times ahead. We don't know what the legislature is going to cut. North Dakota legislature, the governor said they're going to cut from 5 to 15%. That's across the board. So not looking forward to tough times, but more than willing to face them and work with them. I'm asking for your support, and thank you.
All right, well, thank you all for coming tonight, and most importantly, thank you for your willingness to serve the people of Cottington County. We'll take a short break and get our legislative candidates up here. We'll see you in 5 minutes.
Certainly. Well, thanks again and welcome back to the second edition, our second part of the forum with the South Dakota State Representatives. And again, we'll do the same thing. We'll do the 2 minutes. Roger will ask some questions, and then we'll kind of go back and forth a little bit, and then we'll close with 2 minutes again. And so, with no further ado, Mr. What was your name again? Roger Widow. Very good. Thanks, Roger.
Anytime, Steve. Okay.
I deserve that.
Welcome. These are District 5 South Dakota State Legislative candidates, 2 incumbents and 1 challenger. And for our 2-minute introductions, we'll start with the challenger, Jacob Sigurdsson.
All right, thank you to the Chamber for hosting and everybody involved in putting this together. Appreciate the opportunity. I am Jacob Sigurdsson. I have lived in Watertown my whole life, 22 years old. I'm a graduate of Northern State University with a Communication Studies and Political Science degree. Current law student at the University of South Dakota. I decided to run for the legislature because when I was a senior in college, I had the opportunity to intern for the legislature, and it created a passion in me to represent the people of District 5 and the people of South Dakota to do what's right and to advance the state that has done so much for me. I'm a conservative. I am pro-life, pro-Second Amendment. I am fiscally conservative as well, and I think especially in these times that we're going to be going through and that we're going through right now, all of those things are of the utmost importance. It's going to be a challenge in the next legislative session to not only balance the budget, but do so in a way that protects the people of South Dakota in the best way possible. I think I am up to that challenge, so I decided to run to put my name in the race to support the people that have supported me. So, thank you.
Hugh.
I'd like to thank the Chamber and you, Roger, for moderating again this year. It's always nice to do this, and I appreciate it. Thank you. My name is Hugh Bartles. I've lived here in Watertown for 38 plus years. I am a longtime businessman here in town. I've got 40 years of banking experience. I was retired as the president of Reliabank. I also worked at Great Western when it was called Farmers and Merchants Bank, F&M. So I've got a lot of years of experience. I also worked 1 year with a manufacturing plant here in Watertown. I think being a banker, you get a lot of business experience, from insurance agencies to manufacturings to restaurants to working with organizations around the community. That's kind of what drove my passion to get involved. Several years ago, I ran and was on the school board for 9 years. I was a school board member about a minute and a half after the oath, and I was elected to be the president of the board. And I served in that role for, I believe, 3 years. So it was a time of a little bit of turmoil in the school system, but we got through it and got things going in a positive way and kept our great schools going here. Since I retired, I ran for the legislature. It gave me an opportunity again to serve the residents of District 5. Over the last 4 years in the House, I've been a member of the Appropriations Committee. That's the committee that sets the budget and the revenue for the state of South Dakota. Our job is to make sure we spend the money where it should be spent, and that we have a balanced budget and we have reasonable revenue estimates. And revenue estimates are really kind of a hard thing, and I've done that for 4 years, been on the subcommittee that did that. You want to be conservative when you set them, but yet you don't want to be so conservative that people said, oh, you left a lot of money on the table and you could have helped us. Yeah, but you still don't want to be so out there that you overspend money. So it is quite of a art, and it's taken very seriously by the legislative committee that does that, the subcommittee of appropriations that makes the recommendation, and the full appropriations committee as well. In my time in the legislature, I've served on the executive board. I've served on government operations and audit committee. I've been chair of the South Dakota of the retirement committee for the House. I've served on 3 different summer studies. So I've been very involved, and Appropriations has several meetings throughout the year. House Appropriations has been meeting once a week now to stay on top of the coronavirus grants coming from the federal government, and so we can understand what's coming, where they're going, and what the strings are that are attached with all of them. So that's what I've been doing with my time. I'd like to go back and use my experience again to help the people of District 5 and the state of South Dakota. And my thing, I wake up every day being a legislator when I vote, And another legislator said, you know, we vote about 2,000 times, and I thought that was a little high until I counted them one day, and I think that's about right. So every time I vote, I try and make sure it's going to move South Dakota forward and help the citizens of District 5 in this state.
And Nancy.
Good evening. Thanks for you two, whatever you're calling yourselves right now, for putting this all together for us. I was afraid we weren't going to be able to have a forum this year, and so I was very happy when I got the message that we could come before the people and talk a little bit about ourselves and what we stand for. Lifelong resident of Watertown. Had a little feeling of deja vu when they set me down here on the corner over here. This is where I sat in a city council seat for 17 years. Before I was on the city council, I owned my own business for over 20 years here in Watertown. And also my husband and I started a business that's going to be celebrating its 50th birthday next month, now, or next year. Now in its third generation. My son and daughter-in-law have pretty much taken over that business along with my grandson who's just come into the business. I also have besides my oldest son that's in the business, I have a daughter that's a kindergarten teacher up at St. Martin's for many years, and her husband is an employee of Terex. And then my youngest son is a physical therapist at Jenkins Living Center, and his wife is one of the directors at the Educare Center over at Lake Area. So we're a strong working family, always have been, raised by a good Lutheran conservative dad who didn't allow us to be lazy or didn't allow us to be boastful. That's why sometimes it's a little bit difficult when you're running for one of these offices. It's not easy to toot your own horn. But what I'll say about serving in the legislature for the past 4 years, I have thoroughly enjoyed every single minute of it. There's been times when there's disappointments, lots of those times, and times when there's lots of joyous occasions. But every vote that I cast, I cast with the residents back home thinking about it. I'm very available to people. I have my email on all the time during the session. When I'm home, I'm available to talk to you at the grocery store, at church, wherever I might see you at. I'm willing to sit down with you and have a conversation. I take that oath completely seriously. When we take the oath out in Pierre, you know, it's a completely moving experience for me, and I've enjoyed it, and I would ask for your support.
Thanks, Nancy. Maybe you should just call us Larry, Curly, and Mo. Mr. Chrysler from the PO can be Mo. All right, I think we'll do the same thing we did with the county commission candidates. We'll start off with a general overview question of what do you think will be the biggest problems facing the legislature this year? Obviously, I think we all know what it's going to be, but we'll start with Nancy this time.
Okay. And what was the question?
I forgot. No. What do you think what are the biggest issues that the legislature will have to be dealing with this year? And let me remind you, have 2 minutes, and then if anybody wants a 1 minute rebuttal, they can have it.
Definitely, just like all the county commissioner candidates said, it's going to be the times that we're going through right now. Although there's still going to be regular business to take care of, so we're still going to have a lot of votes to cast. We have a lot of things that's going on. As you know, 2 years ago, I served on the summer study for the hemp, agricultural hemp in the state of South Dakota. That bill did pass now, and so they're still trying to get all the I's dotted and T's crossed for people that are going to be applying for license to farm hemp. So there's still going to be some dangling things with that. Although I didn't vote for it, now it's passed, and it's something that we're going to have to live with. It's something that we're going to have find room for in our budget that's already overtaxed. But it's one of the chores that will be in front of us. There's always a lot of, a lot of people like to call them just housekeeping bills, but they're all important to somebody. The two committees that I serve on are local government and Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services is going to be a very busy one this year because, as you all know that have been watching our governor's news conferences, she always has the head of Health and Human Services with her, Kim Rison. Wonderful person, does a lot of good for the state. I've learned a lot from her. She comes to all of our meetings, makes herself very available to all of us. During this time, I've had several conversations with her. So that's going to be a big challenge serving on that committee. Local governments, as you heard from some of our candidates before, local government relies a lot on the state in a lot of instances. And so there's going to be a lot of bills that have to do with things that the state needs to help the locals with. So I think we'll have a lot of business as usual, but it's going to be busy because of all the things we're going through right now.
And Hugh.
Thank you. I think the thing that I'm going to spend my time on for the rest of this year will be the coronavirus and the impact to revenue. I think that could be a huge thing. The governor said it could be as much as 30 or 40%. In our state, we were projecting for FY21 that we'd have $1,742,000,000 in revenue, in general fund revenue. And of that, $1,102,000,000 of that is sales tax. So sales tax is the vast majority of that revenue. We have a bigger issue than even the city probably has with sales tax. And that's going to be a huge issue as we move forward, what we're going to have to look at cutting. But we also have to manage, as legislators, the grant money that's coming into the state. Just because the federal government gives money to the state, that doesn't mean it can be spent in our state unless we give them authority to spend it. And as of this afternoon, the update on that is there's a total of $1,575,547,000 in grants flowing into the state. Now, those aren't all going through the state. A lot of them are going direct to cities and schools. Like there's $36 million that is going direct to airports in that. For issues for operating under the coronavirus because of less flights. There's $107 million that went directly to healthcare providers as examples. But we're trying to manage all of that so as we try and fill these needs and voids, we know what they got to help service themselves through the federal government. Some of this money will flow through the state to locals. Some goes directly to them. Some stays with the state. It's been a big job. We spent 2.5 hours going over this page-and-a-half list the last 2 weeks. I think it's going to be a big issue going forward is the Federal Expenditure Authority and cuts we're going to have to make if the federal government doesn't let us use some of this money to replace revenue. And when you're looking at cuts, it's really quite a deal when you're with state government. Out of every dollar, 49 cents of it goes to education in our state, out of the state general fund. The next 35 cents goes to taking care of people. That's Medicaid, Department of Social Services, Department of Health, and the state institutions like Redfield and the hospital in Yankton. We spend 10 cents. The next 10 cents goes to protecting the public, which is our corrections, the courts, public safety, and the Attorney General. And then we have 6 cents out of every dollar that funds the rest of government. So if we have to do a 20 or 30% cut in government, we have to hit some of these big numbers. We have to hit education, we have to hit health care, we have to hit taking care of people. And it's going to be some hard decisions to make going forward. And so we need to understand the whole big picture and look through it. I think that's going to be the most time-consuming thing we do in the legislature in a special session this year and in the budgeting session in the next regular session in January, and the redo of the current budget. We'll redo, I think, the FY21 budget in a special session, and I think we'll redo it again when we come back in January. So we're going to be spending a lot of time monitoring those things, how these federal dollars are being spent, how many of them we can actually spend, and what the strings are that are going with them. So I think that's where we're going to spend our time.
Jacob.
Yeah, I think both of them are right. Obviously, the state budget is going to be a huge issue this year. It's going to be hard to work out a constitutionally balanced budget. But I think aside from that, obviously everybody knows that's going to be an issue. But one issue that I think is going to be big this year and needs to be addressed is going to be workforce development and economic development. Because when you look at what we're dealing with right now, we have people out of jobs. We have people who are losing their own revenue without their paychecks. So what we need to do to kind of offset some of the problems that the state is going to have is see what the state can do to boost the economy, keep people in the state. We've seen problems in South Dakota for the last 10 plus years of our young people leaving the state. If we can keep those people in the state, That leads to more people working in the state, paying taxes in the state, buying things in South Dakota, and all of those things lead to more general fund revenue for the state, among other things. Obviously, we like to have our people who are born here stay here, but when it comes down to it, when we're looking at a budget, essentially crisis that we're going to face next year, we need to look at ways that we can mitigate that, because we're already seeing the problems. We already know we're not going to have all of the money that we thought we were going to have. What it comes down to is replacing that money in a responsible, fiscally conservative way. So I think what I would do as a legislator is work on our economic development and our workforce development to help offset some of these problems that we're going to face this year and in the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Thank you. I'm a lifelong South Dakotan, and it seems like every year we hear the same thing, that there's just not enough money in the state budget to do everything that people want to be done. Is there an answer to that? Do we need another revenue source besides our state sales tax, or do we just keep on in a bare bones kind of fashion? And we'll start with Jacob.
Well, I think it's kind of a tough question. You know, like I said, I'm a fiscal conservative. I think we need to do what we can without the tax burden on the people, do what we can with what we have. As far as an additional revenue source, I think honestly what I was just talking about is a good way to do that, keeping people in the state, keeping the money that they're earning, keep that here so they're spending money here to boost our economy. I guess aside from that, we do have a problem with slow revenue growth. That's another thing we can look at, is looking at additional ways to grow revenue growth without increasing the tax burden on the people. It's tough to create a balanced budget, but we're mandated by the South Dakota Constitution to do that, and that's a good thing, I think. To keep our budget balanced and keep our AAA credit rating, we need to do what we can with what we have. So I guess as far as looking for additional revenue sources, there's kind of an underlying question there of increasing taxes or creating new taxes. That's not something I think we need to do. I think we are doing good with what we have. We can do better, looking at fiscal conservatism, looking at ways we're spending our money, seeing if we can move some of that money around and put it in places that make us more efficient as a state. So additional revenue would be good, but like I said, moving some money around, finding pieces that we can put in place to create more revenue is what we should look at first.
Hugh.
There is very slow growth in revenue in our state. Average growth over the last 10 years is around $42 million a year. Sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but it's in $700 million budget. We get requests every year in appropriations from different people. I can just think of a couple that are near and dear to a lot of people's hearts: the community support providers who take care of some of the people in our state that need care, the most care. They're out in areas like the Human Service Agency here in town and Lifescape in Sioux Falls. They think they need another $18 million in order to adequately take care of these people. Our nursing homes want another $36 million on ongoing revenue, state revenue in. There's all types of demands like that. We have problems with state employees, getting state employees and keeping them hired. That's an issue we have. We have a lot of needs, but I agree we need to look at more efficiencies and gaining revenue through industrial development, job development, ag development. You know, more ag processing in our state would be a huge thing that would help generate revenue here in our state. We did some steps this year to help get that a little bit easier through the zoning process, to facilitate the zoning process, which I think was a good thing. It didn't change any local zoning ordinances. It just changed how things move through them, and that they had to move through in a timely manner, which I think is a good thing for development, as well as the opponents of development. They know there's a unique time frame and they've got to work within it. So I think that was a good move. I've been a longtime supporter of the tech schools in our state. Been very successful helping the tech schools, especially the one here in Watertown. I brought home over $2 million to help with the construction of the Prairie Lakes Healthcare Education Edition that will be open this fall. Let them take another couple hundred students into healthcare occupations, which is huge need in our state. The other day when we were at the legislature, I think they said there was 900 openings for nurses that day in South Dakota. That's a lot of openings and a lot of jobs that could help our economy if we could fill them. Even state agencies like the hospital in Yankton has got 2 wings closed down because we just can't hire nurses to fill them. And that's an issue. We need more medical staff in our state. I support that wholeheartedly. This year in the budget, we had some extra one-time money, and I agree that education and workforce is a big thing. So I got appropriations to agree with me to put $1.5 million into the budget to help buy equipment for the technical colleges in our schools, because they're all running fuller classes than normal, but they don't have enough equipment. Like at Lake Erie, instead of having 2 guys working on a diesel engine taking it apart, they got 3 and 4. They need more diesel engines, just as an example, for these students to tear apart and put back together again. And that came with a match. You know, we'd give $2 if they could find $1. So we tried to do that. And they're going out and fundraising for the match to make that work. That's kind of how South Dakota gets along. I think that growing our economy inside of our state is the action. It would be nice to have another tax source, but the people in the state just don't seem to want that. There's a few people that come up to me and say, I'm willing to pay more taxes. I give them the address of the state treasurer. It's kind of one of those things. Everybody wants a little bit, but nobody wants to pay for it.
Nancy.
Well, I, for one, am very proud to be from a state that's conservative enough that we support ourselves on our state income tax and the fees we charge for state services. The only other option would be a corporate income tax, which we don't want to see because we have a lot of corporations, big companies in South Dakota that would not be here had it not been for our lack of corporate income tax. And the other thing would be a personal income tax. And I don't think any of us want to see another tax form that we have to make out every year to send personal income taxes into the state. So I'm proud of the fact that we can support ourselves on, like I say, the sales tax and the fees that we charge. It's not a bad thing. When I talk to people from other states that already have both corporate income taxes and personal income taxes, and they're still struggling with their budget. And a lot of those states are not AAA rated like we are. That's a very, very important thing. We take care of our people. I told you I serve on the Health and Human Services Committee. 1/3 of our budget goes to support health and human services. A lot of that could come off on that if we can get some of our people to work. We need to keep promoting businesses coming to South Dakota to get the people that aren't working into work so that our sales tax does increase. That's the answer to the whole thing, is everybody be working and taking care of themselves, and then the sales tax are going to be plenty ample to support our state. And a lot goes to our fine appropriators that have made every dollar stretch into 2, I must say that.
Thanks, Nancy. I have a question. I think I might have asked it at a previous candidates forum in the past, but you say our annual growth is very small, and yet we always hear that South Dakota has the most business-friendly business atmosphere in the country. Those two things don't seem to mesh. If we have the most friendly business atmosphere in the country, why is our revenue growth so stagnant? And we'll start with Nancy.
You know, we used to talk about that when we were on the city council a lot when we were trying to attract a business into town. I think our weather does have a lot to do with it. You know, if you're being solicited by states all over, some of these states that are going to hit that business with a corporate income tax and hit their people with a personal income tax, they're not thinking of that when they first go into that state. They're looking at the beautiful weather, they're looking at the tax breaks that they give. We cannot afford to give as many tax breaks as some states do just because of the way that we balance our budget, just because of the way that we have our money structured in South Dakota. We can't give some of those huge breaks to some of the huge companies that we would like to see come into South Dakota. But the part of that that's good is if we can convince them that once they come to South Dakota, we've got ready workforce and we've got all kinds of things, all kinds of benefits that we can offer them after they're here, such as their employees not having a lot of tax burden. So those are the things I think that companies look at when they're looking at coming into a state or a city.
Hugh.
I've done a lot of work with bringing industries into the community and to the state, and it is a hard thing to do. A lot of them look at workforce availability and who we have for jobs. That's why I'm such a champion of education, especially technical colleges. That's kind of the key, to have those trained people to work that have the ability to do what you want to do. And once we get them here, they usually come believers in the fact it doesn't take as many people here in South Dakota as it does other places, because we have a really good work ethic and we get a lot more work done with fewer people. But it does take a little bit to get them over that hump. And I think some of that holds true, and people really understood that, like with Telelect when they stayed here in South Dakota. I don't think it was the best deal, but the workforce kept them here. Even though they need more workers as they get into their new building and get back to full production, they don't want to leave these good workers behind. And I think we need to keep working down that path and making people believers in that. And that's really the key. I think our weather plays part of it, but a big part of it is having a solid state. I was talking to a representative from Brookings that used to be the mayor of Brookings just today about how important it was to have a fully funded retirement system at the state level. Bell Brands moved in from Chicago, and they were worried about having to help pay to fund the retirement system, which they've basically ignored in Illinois, as well as the rest of their budget. And that's partially why they relocated to South Dakota, is because we did have a solid basis and not a lot of extra taxes, and they didn't see a need for us to have big, huge increases going forward. So it all makes a lot of sense. It's kind of a lot of multiple pieces working together, and I think the numbers we have of available workforce, that's why we work so hard in state government to bring workers back. We have 2 or 3 different websites and services to bring people home. We do a lot of things to keep people here. The grants and the scholarships, like the Build Dakota scholarships at the technical colleges, where they have to they get a free ride, but they make a technical commitment to work here for 3 years with a business. And businesses have stepped up here at Lake Area. We have the vast majority of the Build Dakota scholarships are here at Lake Area because they found businesses to fund half of them. So they've doubled the number of Build Dakota scholarships here. And that's really a good thing. Things like that, I think, make a lot of sense, move our state forward, and help us have a little bit more growth in our state. Keep the people here, bring people to South Dakota.
Jacob.
Yeah, I think all the points that were made already are good points. I think the question being, are we actually as business friendly as we say we are? I think we absolutely are. I don't think there's anybody in the state that would start a business here and then regret that they started a business in South Dakota. We have a very good business climate. The problem with, it's not a problem, but we live in a very low tax state. The state's not in the business of buying development. We're not, sort of putting a lot into bringing businesses in. I think that's something we could do more of, but in the state that we are, I think, like I said, nobody's going to come in here and start a business and then regret it. But when you look at slow revenue growth as well, the two are correlated, but one is not caused by the other. There's a lot more that goes into our business friendly climate and into our slow revenue growth. Like was said earlier, our workforce is short. We need to keep people here. We're doing some things to keep people here. Are we doing enough? Maybe, maybe not. I think maybe not. People are leaving, keeping people here, keeping a steady workforce of employable people here. will increase businesses coming in and will increase revenue and stop slow revenue growth and speed it up. So I think, like I said, the two are not caused by one another. They are correlated, but we do have a very friendly business climate here. Our slow revenue growth is caused by more than one factor, obviously, so I guess that would be.
Okay, I have a question texted to me from I don't know who. I don't recognize the number, but I'll read it to you. I still wonder why the legislative fear expanding Medicaid when states that did it 8 years in with no federal fear of reprisals or facing payback to the feds. Looks like South Dakota came out and continues to come out on the short end and compared to those states that expanded. There's a question in there somewhere, I'm sure. We're talking about when the federal government offered Medicaid expansion and that the federal government would pay for it, and South Dakota said no, and I think it's Hugh's turn to start. Lucky you.
Medicaid expansion was turned down before I was in the legislature, but the underlying reason for that is that Medicaid does cost the state money. It's roughly about 40 cents out of every dollar that's spent on Medicaid is state money, comes out of the general fund. And that's why we spend 35% of our budget on taking care of people, is paying that 40% of the Medicaid cost is the vast majority of that. If we would have expanded it and increased the eligibility, then under the rules, they would pay 100% of it for 3 years, and then we had to pay for it. And I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but I think it was $100 million price tag to pick it up at the end of 3 years is what the estimate was. And you have a $40-some million increase in revenue every year. It's pretty hard to pick up a new $100 million bill. And I'm pretty sure that's why Governor Dugard did not recommend it, and the legislature did not want to do it either.
Jacob?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that this wasn't a program to pay for it forever. The state was going to have to pick up that money eventually, like you said, after 3 years. We're already seeing issues with people who are on Medicaid, and we can look at the nursing home crisis for that. We don't have enough money to pay for what we need to pay for. I think the expansion of it, the number was thrown out of $100 million. Adding that on top of the financial situation that we're already in would be detrimental to the state. So I think while it sounds nice to expand Medicaid and that the federal government's going to pay for it, when you get down to it, that's not actually what it is. It's not something that was feasible for the people of South Dakota. So I think Governor Dugard made the right decision in not recommending that we take part in that. And I think down the road we're going to see some states that did do that. We may not see it now, but eventually they're going to run into problems where they're going to see issues like South Dakota with low revenue or slow revenue growth. They're not going to be able to foot that bill either. We won't be in that position, so I'm thankful for that.
And Nancy?
Yeah, not a lot to add because like Representative Bartle said, that happened before we were out there in Pierre, but we did get in on the tail end of the discussion because there was still some residuals going on out there that people that thought that we should. But I've been watching all the debates on Facebook and other places about states that have done Medicaid expansion, and it hasn't worked out as well for all of those states as they were promised in the very beginning. And a lot of the states have not received their money from the federal government, and so they've ended up in worse shape than before they went into the program. So I imagine that it's probably going to rear its head again at some point, and we'll have to have the discussion. But I feel the same as these guys did, that Governor Dugard did a good thing by refusing that, yes.
Okay, and here's another question that was emailed, and I must admit I had not heard this, so I had to do some research to find out about it. But the question is, recently the state of South Dakota spent $130,000 outfitting the Capitol building in Pierre with a TV studio used primarily by the governor in talking with national news outlets. As a legislature, Hugh and Nancy, did you have a chance to approve that expenditure? And if yes, how did you vote? And if no, should you have been able to approve that? And for Jacob, how would you have voted on that expenditure? And let's start with Jacob.
Well, I guess I'm in the same boat. I hadn't actually heard of that. With the TV studio, I guess I haven't seen an actual studio. When I've been at the Capitol, I see a couple cameras in the corner of each chamber, and then you have the conference room on the second floor. Right off the bat, I mean, I don't necessarily think the taxpayers probably should have paid $130,000 for a TV studio, but on the same hand, that TV studio isn't just being used for no good. It's every time I've seen a camera being used, it's to show the people what's going on at the Capitol. I think it's very important to have that transparency and allow people to watch what's going on at the Capitol at all times, essentially. So I guess I can't necessarily give an affirmative answer of how I would have voted. The fiscal conservative in me says no, but the open and transparent government side of me says yes. So sorry, I can't give a yes or no, but.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about this either, so. But I bet Hugh has heard about it.
I just heard about it because of the expose that one of the television stations did on it, and I don't want to give them any credit for it, so I'm not going to mention their name. On capital,
Does it rhyme with hello?
Capital outlay decisions by state agencies and the governor aren't laid out in detail in the budget. That's one of the things that changed from 40 years ago when I worked for state government. I mean, if you wanted to buy a typewriter, you had to explain that to the Appropriations Committee. And we don't do that anymore. That's something I think we could change and get a little more information on the capital outlay dollars in each budget. But a lot of it is repetitive capital outlay needs, you know, like the Highway Patrol buys 25 or 30 cars every year, and it would take a lot of time to really analyze all that. But no, we do not micromanage expenditures that small. We do not micromanage anything that small as a legislature. We look at a lot of things. We spent 25 minutes this session talking about a $2,500 audit fee, but that's about as small as we got, and it was a pretty small fee that wasn't going to be spent. And I didn't quite understand why it took 25 minutes to talk about it. But no, we didn't get an opportunity to approve that. It's hasn't been done for several years at that level. Should it be? Possibly, if there's a major expenditure like that. But things change. When we're not there, we're only there 10 weeks a year. It's pretty hard to lock them into what they're going to spend money on. We have to have some flexibility in the expenditures, or we have to be there more often if we're going to limit what they can do. So it's kind of a double-edged knife. It's worked pretty well to have a citizen legislature that there's 10 weeks a year for several 100+ years. We've balanced the budget. We've never spent more than it was in the budget. And that system is open to use by anybody. The television stations in South Dakota could use it rather than sending someone there to interview the governor or the Secretary of Health or a legislator. That room is available for use. The use of it comes with a fee, as I understand, from the governor's office, and that fee is paid by the station receiving the input. We provided the equipment, but the actual use of it, unless it's like some of the public service the public service announcement the governor's been doing has been recorded there, so we've paid for that. But like when she talks to Fox News or CNN or some other broadcast network, that network is actually paying the cost to run the studio. So the ongoing costs, operational costs, are borne by someone else.
And for those of you who are not as old as Hugh and I, a typewriter was a thing we used to write on before computers came along. And then
I started out government, or my second job in government was in the Division of Banking. And we had 10 examiners on the road, and they typed everything on manual typewriters. And I found electric typewriters in the surplus office, surplus state property, and rather than have them auctioned, I gave the electric ones to my crew on the road. And then I had to ask for permission to buy cases to put them in. So I've even asked the legislature for cases for typewriters.
And do they still make ribbons for them? Who is that? And Corona, that's right. Anyway, sorry about that. Nancy, we're talking about the
Yes,
governor's
I know
studio.
typewriters too.
We're talking about the governor's
Right.
studio.
And the easy answer to your question, did we vote on it? Nope. It was $130,000, so it was within the governor's spending ability. And do I think it's a good idea? I don't know. You know, first I saw it was when it's on TV, and it's in the basement of the Capitol is where it is. That's what they said anyway on that unnamed television station that told us about it. I guess it's a time saver and a money saver, probably over a length of time. If we use it like we have been this year, I'm sure a lot of her broadcasts have come from that we've seen. You know, can we save back $130,000? Probably. It's okay. I would have liked to known about it. You know, I never like to find out things that are happening in the Capitol or even in the state without having knowledge of it before. That's what legislators are for. That's why you elect us, so we can keep track of those things for you. And we didn't have that opportunity. But I think, you know, virtually, I think it would have probably passed through the legislature too.
You got a chance to answer that, right? Okay.
Started.
Okay, here's another question that was emailed in for everybody. What is your view on vaccinations and the current laws in South Dakota? Are they necessary, and should vaccinations be mandatory, applied to all? Would you support changes to current laws regarding vaccinations? And if so, what changes would you support? Nancy.
Well, that came through my committee, of course, because I'm Health and Human Services. It was probably one of the most heart-wrenching days that I've ever spent at the Capitol. The committee room was absolutely packed with standing room and cameras set up in other places for other people to see of both for and against vaccinations. You know, to me, I work for the school district, and I was completely on board with vaccinations. I am. I mean, this virus, if it hasn't proved anything else, it's how important vaccinations are to our population. But the heartbreaking stories that people brought up, they're completely unfounded. We don't know that anything is really true. Medical evidence shows us that, you know, there's not really any stone cold evidence that a vaccination has caused any harm for a child. I admit some of the cases we heard, it seemed very coincidental that their child ended up real sick or whatever after a vaccination. But no, we have to have vaccinations in this state. The email, I don't know how many hundreds of email, and I was keeping track at first, but I think it probably ended up about even. But the ones that were against vaccinations all had a story to tell. The ones that said we need to vaccinate our kids at school age, those were the people that were just looking at the people around them and the conditions of the world and wanting to keep their kids and other kids safe. It's not, you know, just not the child getting vaccinated that's safe. It's everybody that's around that child too, just like this virus that we're trying to fight now. So yeah, it was a very difficult one. It was one of the few days I did not want to go to work that morning because I knew what was coming. But we got that handled. I think it may come back because the people were very, very convinced of their philosophy on vaccinations.
Let's go to Jacob next.
Well, I'm 22 years old and I've never used a typewriter, but I've also, in my lifetime, thank God, never seen somebody have polio or have measles or anything like that. I am very pro-vaccination. I think they have done great things for the entire world. I wouldn't support stripping any, I guess, regulations on them. This question essentially comes from the bill this year that would have taken away the requirement for children in school to have vaccinations. That's not something I would support. I think vaccinations are of the utmost importance. You know, as far as the question on should they be mandatory, that's the only place on this where I kind of falter. If I was king of the world, which I shouldn't be, I would say maybe they should be, but it's also an issue of medical freedom. That's when we look at House Bill 1235, that's what it was said to be, was a medical freedom bill, and I think it was. But when you look at vaccinations, you have to answer the question of, should the government be forcing people to put something into their body that they don't want? That's not a question that I would generally say yes to, but I am pro-vaccination. I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't support a bill that would take away the requirement for children in school to have them.
Your turn, Hugh.
I agree.
All right, thanks for coming.
I voted against that bill. I agree, it's the people around, just not the people there. And there are several exemptions to the vaccination rules. If there's one that needs to be added, I'd consider that, but I think we handle it pretty well in our state, and I think it's important just for the general well-being of the state. And I agree with Nancy. Everybody's waiting for a vaccination for COVID, and so COVID-19, and that's what everybody keeps saying every day. You hear that over and over, and it'll come eventually. So.
If I could just add one more thing, just to be sure, we have not mandated that every child has to have a vaccination. What we've mandated is if they're going to attend public school, they must be vaccinated. Parents still have the choice. They can make a choice of homeschooling, private school. If they can find another school where they don't require vaccinations, then that's their choice. So we're not mandating the shots. We're just mandating shots if they're going to a public school.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we're running out of time, so we're going to give everybody a 2-minute wrap up, and we'll start over on this side with Nancy.
Okay. Well, once again, I just wanted to let people know that I have very much appreciated their support for the last 2 elections. I would appreciate your support again. Reemphasize that your concerns are mine. That's been my motto ever since I first ran for my first city council seat, and I think people would agree with me. I'm easy to talk to. I'm very accessible. I'm there and willing to discuss whatever you have to, and I don't have a closed mind. If you want to try and convince me of something that I haven't been for, that's perfectly fine with me, and I would just ask for your support one more time to go to state legislature.
Hugh.
Thanks for having us again. I appreciate it, the opportunity to come here. And I too appreciate the voters of District 5 having sent me to appear for 2 terms, and I'd like to go back for a 3rd one. I think my experience and my knowledge of the state government and the budgeting process will be very valuable the next 2 years. I think that's the key to having a successful South Dakota, to keep our tax base where it's at, to keep our freedoms where they're at, and to be cognizant of our rights under the Constitution. I am a strong supporter of gun rights, and I vote pro-abortion unless I think it's going to wind up in a big lawsuit. And it's some of the things that really, pro-life. I said pro-abortion. I'm pro-life, and I think that that's a key to South Dakota and how we live. And I just appreciate your vote again to send me back to Pierre. Thank you.
And Jacob.
Yeah, thanks again to the chamber and everybody involved with setting this up. Thankful for the opportunity. Just once again, I'm running because I think it's time, one, for a young perspective in Pierre. There's not a lot of young activism in South Dakota, and that's something I'm trying to promote with my campaign. I'm trying to bring a new, young, conservative approach to legislation in Pierre. Like I said, I'm pro-life, I'm pro-Second Amendment, I'm fiscally responsible. What I would do if I was sent to Pierre is I would not only vote to support those values, but I would be a fighter and a champion for those values. The last few sessions out in Pierre, there's been certain bills and different ways that people have done things on the ideas of the Second Amendment and abortion and things like that. Not only will I vote to protect your freedoms and protect your rights, I will fight for them. I will sponsor legislation. I will do everything I can to protect you, the citizens of District 5 and the citizens of South Dakota, in a responsible and conservative way. I would appreciate your support. Just one last time, I think it's time for a young, conservative approach to legislation in Pierre. If you believe so as well, I am the candidate to vote for. You have 2 options, 3 candidates. The decision is yours. I hope I've earned your support. Thank you for watching, and that's it.
All right, thank you, Jacob, Hugh, and Nancy. We really appreciate you coming here tonight to take part in this. I'd also like to thank Peter Boyle, our city technical wizard, for handling all the behind-the-scenes stuff. I'd like to thank the Chamber and Tim for putting this event on, and I'd especially like to thank him for inviting me to be the moderator. You know, since I'm no longer the editor of the Public Opinion, this was one of the parts of the jobs I really enjoyed and I've really missed. So it's been really
And
fun.
you're great at it.
Oh, thank you, thank you. All right, I'll vote for Nancy, and you two are still up in the air. But it's been great. Get out and vote, everybody. Lastly, I'd like to thank all the voters for staying home tonight and watching us on various TV and live streaming. So with that, good night.